Hello, it's Henry. I'm back again with BLU Review. It's Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Everybody's favorite year so far, I'm sure. Um, anyway, I'm going to be continuing the 13 Days of Halloween and have four more films, two that I've been watching today, and two more that I'll be watching tomorrow. So I'm going to talk about all of them, and I hope you get something out of this. Maybe a few chuckles. Who knows? So the first film up is one of my very favorites. Um, this one is it's been with me a long time. I even did another video, which you might find on my channel, about this back when I did the video cast for She Never Slept website. Um, that video was hard to see, and I was pretty nervous. So now I'm slightly more visible and I guess slightly less nervous. Um, That was years ago, though, like 8 years ago, not 7 years ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But anyway, here's the movie. I still love it. It's still in my top 20 of all time. Cannibal Apocalypse. Check that out, man. So you can actually see the cover now, unlike the other video. Um, and this is a damn masterpiece. Studio Canal and Keynote Lorber put this out, so it's pretty prestigious now. It's come a long way, baby. So uh, I've talked endlessly about this film to people, anyone who will listen. Um, I picked it up on DVD when it first came out on DVD, maybe 2002, I think, and I had never seen it before in any form. There had been a cut form with a retitling like Invasion of the Flesh Hunters, and of course, overseas it was known as Apocalypse Domani, which is actually the real title of it, which means Apocalypse Tomorrow, which is a riff on Apocalypse Now, Apocalypse Tomorrow. Get it? So, is it a sequel to Apocalypse Now? Well, I don't know. Not really, but does it have zombies? No. Does it have some of the urban warfare of Dawn of the Dead? Yes. Are there cannibals? There are cannibals, but they're not in Papua New Guinea and the Amazon coated in this white chalky makeup, holding spears and chanting and ripping open the rib cages and consuming the hearts. This is a totally different animal altogether, and I think it's very interesting. So it's like Atlanta, Georgia, uh, the dawn of the 1980s, and um, John Saxon, who recently passed away, R.I.P. John. He was an incredible guy. Though I never got to meet him in person, but he was one of my favorite film personalities. John Saxon plays Norman Hopper, who is was a captain in Vietnam, and coincidentally, near the end of his tour, he just happens to find a pit where the Viet Cong have imprisoned two soldiers. They just happen to be his friends from Atlanta that I guess, he says from his hometown. So I don't know if he grew up with them or he's buddies with them. I mean, Saxon was a little older than those other two actors at the time. Who knows? But they're pretty loyal to him, and they were in his company apparently. And I guess he figured they were already dead. And then hey, here they are. Um, and they're eating a woman who got burned by napalm. And then one of them bites Norman, and then he wakes up from this nightmare, which really happened, into the current world, the milieu of Atlanta, Georgia, with his kind of domestic life and his, kind of blonde wife, and she's, okay. The dubbing for her character, because she didn't dub her own voice. This was an Italian production, remember? It was shot in Atlanta, but it's Antonio Margheriti, so a lot of post sync and stuff and ADR work. So she doesn't have a particularly compelling personality, even though she's second billed in the movie. The actress Elizabeth Turner, I don't know what her original name was. She did have a memorable death scene at the beginning of Lucio Fulci's The Psychic, which was a reprise of a very memorable death scene at the end of Lucio Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling. So if you want to see side by side comparison, I would go ahead and queue those two up to the proper places and see them one after the other, and you'll see a lot of, you know, um, Yeah, a lot of action over the side of a cliff. So basically, Norman's tormented by these dreams, nightmares, memories, flashbacks, whatever of Vietnam. And then one of the two guys who he found in the pit just happens to call him. He just got out of the loony bin after several years there, I guess. His name is Charlie Bukowski. And yes, named after the famous writer, but played by John Morgan, aka Giovanni Lombardo Radici, another favorite of mine who I have corresponded with very briefly on Facebook. Um, he's a cool guy. Um, so he's gotten out of the asylum and he's looking up, Norman, his old captain, his old buddy, and he just thinks, maybe they can go and have a beer. And Mr. Hopper, while he's fending off the advances of the nubile teenage neighbor, he decides at first he's going to do it, and then he kind of gets a bad feeling about it and doesn't go. So instead, Charlie goes to a movie and he sees a couple making out and decides that her neck is luscious enough for him to kind of take a chunk out of, which he does. And essentially, um, then there begins a whole rampage in the mall. These bikers try to apprehend him, and the cops come in and they're talking about tear gas. And finally, Norman comes in and says, hey, this guy's got this credible training. There's no way you're going to get him with tear gas. I'm not going to give away how he dispenses of the tear gas, but it's pretty hilarious. Um, yeah, I mean, John Morgan is incredible in this role. He's totally over the top. He didn't dub his own voice either, but they got a good uh, lunatic sounding guy doing Charlie. So Charlie does get captured, and he's back to the padded cell, and this time he's back with Tommy, his buddy, played Tommy Thompson, I think is the name of the character. Tommy King is the actor, and he was in Black Caesar and a number of other blaxploitation films in the 70s. And apparently he lived in Atlanta, so that's how he got the part. And he's been in there, I guess, the whole time too. So the two of them, are going to hatch a scheme to escape and start cannibalizing, wherever they can. And one thing leads to another, and Hopper falls in with them, and then a nurse in the hospital, the mental asylum, and next thing you know, you have a kind of a similar racial gender makeup of the famous four from Dawn of the Dead, and it goes into the sewers, and then it gets really wild. So now that I've summed up the salient points of the plot, I just want to say that this movie is just, it's endless fun. It's like a feel good movie. It's a comfort film for me. I've watched it countless times, and I was really happy when it finally came out on Blu-ray. And I sold my other my DVD that I mentioned earlier on eBay, and now I can watch it all I want on Blu-ray. So today I watched it, and it's lost none of its luster, none of its charm. Um, Margheriti is a great director. He did some amazing Italian Gothics early on. Then he did kind of more generically directed action films, quite a lot of those. This one he lumps in with the action films, uh, even though it's a cannibal film. But I should say that not only are these, the vets cannibalistic, but when they bite these people, if the person survives, then they get this hunger transmitted to them like a plague or a virus. John Saxon says in a very memorable interview on the disc that he was fascinated with that element of it, and so it's kind of starts to go in the direction of Rabid, where you have like a city. It starts to almost spread out, possibly into the city. Next thing you know, some of our supporting characters are cannibalistic, so they're biting everybody. So um, Norman, faces it nobly. Saxon is incredible in this film. I can't even describe it really. My one disappointment with the Blu-ray was that the liner notes were not the original liner notes from the DVD, which really summed up the charm of this film and how it had been kind of practically lost amid all these cuts and retitlings, and that now has been rescued and it has its own incredible, peculiar charm. It's horror and action and some humor, some absurdity, a bit of cannibalism, and you know, what more can you ask for? So I love it. And then I moved on to another film. And this one, my theme today is I call it body horror because I think both of these films I watched today, one I'm actually watching now, the second one, is that, you know, like Cronenberg's work and other later strange films like Anti-Birth in the modern era, um, these two films are like basically about, you know, transformation of the flesh. And in Cannibal Apocalypse, you know, the transformation comes from being bitten by a cannibal, and you the transmitted, you know, the craving for flesh is transmitted to you. Excuse my brain thing here. So, um, and then in this film, which I'm going to tell you about now, it's called Welcome Home, Brother Charles, sometimes known as Soul Vengeance by Jamafanaka, the great Jamafanaka. Uh, this film has some real body horror, yes, and some transformations that will blow your mind. Out of control and impossible to describe. But I'll do my best to kind of set the stage and just say that Marlo Monti, who I don't know if he acted in anything else the rest of his life, but he's absolutely dynamite in this film as brother Charles. Charles gets unjustly set up by a racist cop. He goes to prison. The cop, right before he goes to prison, the cop tries to emasculate him with a straight razor. He's not wholly successful. And then there's this weird subplot about the racist cop disarming a radioactive bomb, and somehow he's found out that his wife is sleeping with a black man. Oh no, as he puts it, there are some things worse than rape. So this guy is a real piece of scum. Let's just call it like it is. I forgot the name of the actor, but Freeman is the ironic is the name of the cop. And you know he's just oily and sleazy and just disgusting. Tries to choke his wife to death when he, you know, finally semi confronts her about her affair. And you know, he lies in court, and everyone portrays him as this noble police officer, including his partner. And the partner is seemingly a decent guy, but he's an enabler. I mean, he just lets this guy run hog wild all over the place and fuck people up and talk shit. And you know, that's not a good trait for a best friend to have or a partner. He needs to, you know, rein him in a little bit and say, guy, you know, and he kind of does half-heartedly a few times, but it's not till toward the end of the film that character Cunningham he gets any kind of conscience really, you know, and tries to make up to Charles for what they've done. Um, so Charles goes to prison, and in prison he mutates the area of his body that was attacked. Begins to off camera um, have this incredible power. Not only does it heal, uh, it it can distend very lengthy, and it can attack people and coil around their neck and murder them and choke them. So if you know what part of the body I'm talking about, then you can imagine how absolutely crazy this is. I love it. It's I don't know how to describe it, but the little bit of effects that do show that what's happening are pretty amazing and hilarious, but also weird and creepy at the same time. Speaking of which, there's this great score that Jamal did, and a lot of it is you know effects through Echoplex, and then there's also you know some saxophone, and it's played in a very there's some tribal stuff, and then there's some very kind of you know grinding kind of repetitive motifs that are just very haunting and heavy, and not heavy like electric guitar heavy though, but just almost evil sounding, and the repetition brings that to life. Um, if I were at a part in the movie where that sounded off, I would go ahead and you know turn it up a little bit and let you sample it, but I'm not. But in any case, Charles gets revenge against the people who screwed him over, and which sucks because for everybody because he was making a life with a former prostitute who was a really cool woman who got a like a quote unquote real job, and was supporting Charles, and he couldn't find work, and he was down on his luck, and so finally he, uses his mutation to turn the tables on everybody. But his girl is still very loyal all the way up to the end, so that's a good thing. Um, this is a great Blu-ray. It also has Emma, another film of Jamal's that I'm not going to talk about because it has no Halloween value for me, but it is a cool movie too. I knew Jamal Fanaka. We used to talk on the telephone many years ago, and then he remembered me on MySpace, and then he remembered me on Facebook, and he always said friend for life. He was really good friends with my old buddy Bill White, and we were pretty crestfallen when Jamal passed away a few years ago. Um, he was a unique talent and an outrageous talent, and just amazing person. So anyway, Brother Charles is a good Halloween movie because it is a little creepy and scary at times, and it's kind of sick and it's kind of horrific. So and then there's the whole transformation deal. So that was my second movie for today. I'm about almost halfway through it now, playing over there on the television and enjoying the hell out of it. So tomorrow, the 23rd, that magic number 23, October 23rd, I'm going to um, watch two more films. And they're going to continue in the vein of Brother Charles in one sense only, and that's really that. Well, two senses. They're horror films, but or at least genre, definitely horror related films labeled as such, and they're both. Well, all three of them are blaxploitation films, so they're all from that kind of golden era of the early '70s to early '80s, where we had all these incredible uh, films starring black performers and all black casts, and doing a plethora of different kinds of subgenres, including horror. Of course, everyone knows about Blackula, and everyone scoffs at Blackenstein, but not many people know about Brother Charles, and not many people know about this one. This is called Lord Shango, and this is the voodoo entry to our blaxploitation uh, annals. I will say you can't really make out the back, but it stars Marlene Clark, and we're going to be talking a bit about her before I just leave for the day. Um, Lord Shango, I said it was our voodoo entry because the most popular blaxploitation horror voodoo film is undoubtedly Sugar Hill and her Zombie Hitmen. Um, I don't have that on Blu-ray, so it didn't quite make the cut. But it is a great film. But Lord Shango is a more serious film, and the interesting thing about Lord Shango is it does have the voodoo, it does have the trappings, it does have the culture, and it is advertised and hyped. Sacrifice your soul to Shango in the blood ritual of life and death. So it looks pretty menacing, but actually, it's really a drama about these people in the community and their ties to the voodoo cult or whatever. And Maureen Clark stars, and the great Lawrence Cook from The Spook Who Sat by the Door co-stars, and man, he steals the movie, of course. Totally different kind of character than Dan Freeman in The Spook Who Sat by the Door, though. But these are some great actors. And this movie is, I'm looking forward to watching it again because I was really surprised not so much just how good it was, but how different it was than it had been described in the briefly in the Overlook Horror Encyclopedia years ago. A lot of those films that they reviewed, they had never seen, so they're kind of it's all hearsay. And so years later, as these are surfacing, thanks in part somewhat to the efforts of some of the writers of that book, like Kim Newman. Um, they're kind of not quite what they were described as. So Lord Shango, I think, was kind of briefly described as being a more like serious horror, hardcore voodoo kind of film. My verbiage, not theirs. Than the kind of fun Sugar Hill. Um, it is more serious, but other than that, the rest of that description you just throw in the trash. So anyway, Code Red did a wonderful job. There's a great interview with Marlene Clark, who was in quite a number of films. I think she had a small part in a Russ Meyer film, but I don't remember which one. She's a beautiful African American woman, and she also appears in Putney Swope, Robert Downey Sr.'s great film. But I think among cult circles, she's most well known for this next movie I'm going to watch tomorrow, Ganja and Hess. And there's Marlene Clark, and there's Dwayne Jones, and they're the stars. She is Ganja Meda, and he is Hess Green, Dr. Hess Green. And Dwayne Jones, of course, was the star of Night of the Living Dead. And between that, and Ganja and Hess, he is kind of, to me, the iconic black male horror star. So, you have a whole bunch of white males, and then of course you had Barbara Steele. Um, but Dwayne Jones, I don't know. I think if he'd made a third horror movie, he would be the undisputed king. But that's okay. I mean, these movies are both so important and so powerful and so memorable that it really assures his place forever. And it's funny because he really was not into horror, and he really didn't make that many films, and he really seems to be bemused in interviews before his passing about how much people love and fetishize these films. So that's kind of interesting. But it's done by Bill Gunn. Bill Gunn was the guy who he was an actor, and he was a director. His other supposedly really great movie, I forgot the name of it. Bill White could tell me. Um, it still hasn't been recovered and restored. He did do a later kind of a television miniseries, sort of, and it's along the lines of, well, he also worked on this movie called Losing Ground. He acted in it, and that was a kind of a African American drama around the same era of Daughters of the Dust. And I actually saw the two films back to back on TCM about 3 years ago, and they were great. But he did another one that he directed that was shot a lot of it on video, called Personal Problems, and a limited Blu-ray of that came out. Maybe I'll review it sometime, but it wasn't what I was expecting, and it showed that he was pretty versatile. I think it wasn't a wholly successful project, but man, ambition. Bill Gunn had it. I mean, he wrote and directed this film, and he plays George Maida, Ganja's husband, and essentially this is considered a vampire film by genre aficionados. And then, of course, there's a quote on the box: "One of the most literate, allegorical, and evasive of all horror films." Um, Very true. And now it's a bit more known many years later, but in the late 90s, it came out on DVD in the very early days of DVD. I mean, it was one of the first DVDs put out by a boutique label rather than a big studio. And it was kind of a big deal among collectors who had these cut and retitled, once again, cut and retitled copies, pan and scanned, called Blood Couple and Double Possession and all these things. I had a Blood Couple print myself. Um, and it was hard to tie all the footage together. Blood Couple actually had a couple of interesting passages that don't end up in the DVD director's cut of posthumous director's cut of Ganja and Hess that was on DVD. But um, once again, Kino Lorber, kicked ass and basically said, "Hey, we're going to tie all the footage together." There was a DVD, a second edition DVD that did that, and I always intended to pick it up, and I never did. So I'm glad I waited for this, and they put it out on DVD and on Blu-ray. And this is an important film. It's a very powerful African American film, and about African culture and corruption by Christianity. And there is drinking of blood, but there's no fangs, and I don't know that the word vampire is ever uttered in the film. Um, but Hess Green is very different than Ben in Night of the Living Dead. Hess is a very urbane, classy guy, kind of a bit closer to what Dwayne Jones was like in real life, and just a very cultured dude, a scientist and an archaeologist. And he finds this dagger from this ancient African civilization. This is made up, called Murthia. And when you're stabbed with the dagger, you get this curse. It does something to you. I don't know if the dagger secretes an enzyme into you or what, but then you become addicted to blood, and that destroyed their whole civilization. I guess they all ate and drank each other to death. Um, so now, many years later, hundreds of years later, now Hess has found this dagger, and Maida stabs him with it and kills him. So that, you would think that'd be the end of the movie. We haven't even met Ganja yet, and Hess is already dead, and we're not only like 20 some minutes into the film. But the dagger, yes, it does kill him, but it does turn him into a vampire. And even though they don't call him a vampire, because then he is kind of, I wouldn't say he's undead, but he's cursed to walk the earth and seek blood, and he's kind of like the last Murthian, and just amazing passages, beautiful photography, incredible music. Just it's unconventional. It's not done in a way you would expect this kind of film to be done. It's very moody. It's very atmospheric. And Marlene Clark adds a bit of humor and class and sex appeal when she, as Ganja, comes to visit Hess after her husband is missing, and the guy who stabbed Hess to death, well, to undeath, whatever. And so then they become involved, and of course, then Hess is faced with the dilemma of should he vampirize her with the dagger? Should he kill her and make her like him and share his curse? And it plays out in some interesting ways at the end, and it's I don't know, the mood is heavy. It's hard to describe, but so I won't try, but I'd recommend that you watch this movie. One last note about this film before I wrap up is that Spike Lee remade this movie in the last few years. I don't know what possessed him to do this. He'd already remade Old Boy. Um, he remade another obscure movie, but the remake is even more obscure, and I've totally forgotten. So he was on a roll here with the remakes before he kind of got back on track with like Black Klansman and the Five Bloods. But um, he he retitled it, and he called it Das Sweet Blood of Jesus, or Das Sweet Blood of Jesus, or The Sweet Blood of Jesus, if you say it, kind of quickly. Um, but that DA kind of stands out, and it makes it seem like it's more of a hip hop kind of film than it has any right to be, because the original has nothing to do with that. But um, so in a way, he's trying to update the whole idea. It looks like it was shot on video, not high end like David Lynch either. Maybe it wasn't, but it's probably Spike's ugliest movie of the whatever dozen I've seen of his, and um, the actor playing Hess is uncharismatic. The actress playing Ganja is beyond boring. It's like a dull film, and it follows a script pretty closely, but to no fanfare. The movie didn't really get any attention, and it didn't really deserve any attention. It was a superfluous endeavor from the beginning, and I'm really not sure. I've never read in interviews why he did this. I have read one interview about it, and he talked about how he loved the original, and he, wanted to update it, and he wanted, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all kind of double talk, double talk. It's like, why really did you bother to remake this film? Who knows? Anyway, so I'm gonna wrap up for today, and that's it. Like I said, tomorrow is going to be Lord Shango and GANJA HESS on my TV and Blu-ray player, and then on the 24th, I'll return while I'm watching some films and then talk about them and the two that are coming up. So I'm trying to still keep it the two film a day roughly. I might get ahead on some of them. I might watch a film a little bit earlier. Like tonight, I may dabble into uh, Cannibal Apocalypse or something, or Welcome Home, Brother Charles. But um, I mean, no, I mean Lord Shango. I'm sorry, Lord Shango would be the next one after Brother Charles to watch. So, if I'm up late, I might put some of that on and finish it tomorrow. I'm off work the next 2 days. I know this is like all crucial information for everyone, but um, so I'll be probably making like way too many videos. So anyway, thank you for listening. This is coming in just at a half hour, and that's nice, healthy length. Any more would just be redundant. So take it easy, and I will see you very soon.